but just a general guideline of some of the things you need to think about when you're installing a shower. Okay, so you're planning on installing a new shower, walk-in shower in your bathroom, not a tub area. I'm talking specifically about a walk-in shower. Most of them still today are curb showers, so let's just deal with that. So there's a few things you need to do before you even get started. Before you start putting, you don't just walk in and then you just start putting up your backer board and then start tiling. There's a bunch of things you need to do beforehand to make sure you're not going to have a problem. So one of the first things you need to do is look at your studs. Look at your studs. See if there's any. Well, obviously the shower's being ripped out and and it's ready for the new install. I'm not going over the excuse me, not going over getting to this point, but you're at the point where you want to start rebuilding it. So the first thing you need to do is look at your studs. Make sure that the spacing between the studs is correct, usually 16 on center, that you've got double studs in the corners, because you need one like this and one like this to be able to attach to the corner. A lot of times it happens that there's actually only one stud in the corner, so check for that. You're going to make sure there's no rot. There's no broken ones, that they're the right dimension, their spacing is correct, and then you're gonna fix whatever needs fixing. So if you need to add some studs, you add some studs. If you need to sister, you're gonna check for plumb. You're gonna check for plumb. You're gonna check to make sure they're in plane. So when you put a straight edge against all the studs, say you got a 5-foot shower, you're going to put a straight edge up against it, and when you put up against the studs, all of them are going to touch that straight edge, so they're all in the same plane. If you've got one back and one forward, or it's the level's not sitting flat because you got a bowed stud, you're going to fix that. If you're using a cement backer board, you have to do this before you get to the putting up the board. You're going to have to firm out, you're going to have to sister, you're going to have to plane, you're going to have to do whatever you have to do to get all those studs in plane and plumb. And obviously the right spacing. If you're doing foam board, you can wet shim. I have a bunch of videos on how to do all this stuff, and I'll link to them in the cards and in the description, and possibly the end screen. So like I said, if you're doing backer board, you're going to have to fix all the studs, make sure everything is right before you put your board up. If you're doing a foam board, you can usually just wet shim them and get everything right as you go along. That's one of the things why I like using a foam board. They're lighter, they're easier to install, and you don't have to do a lot of prep beforehand to get a flat plumb wall. If you did the plumbing, make sure everything is correct. I don't do plumbing, I'm a tile guy, I'm not a plumber, but I will check to make sure that there's no leaks, everything is where it's supposed to be, and nothing has been forgotten, because it's a lot easier to fix now than it is to fix afterwards. Usually there's not a problem, but it's a good idea to check and see to make sure that everything is good. So you're going to be doing a shower floor, obviously, so you want to check to make sure your shower floor is strong and it's good and it's appropriate for whatever you're going to install. If you're going to be doing a mud base, all you need to make sure is that it's there, the drain is in the proper position, it's strong enough, and then if it's out of level or if it's not uneven or whatever, when you install your mud, you're gonna that'll all get fixed automatically. If you're going to be using a foam tray, then you have to make sure that the plywood, because you can't go over planks, it has to be plywood. If you have to install a plywood, install a plywood. Make sure it's level, so when you put your foam tray in, that the foam tray is level. Make sure that the drain is in the proper position. Now, depending on what type of system you're going to use, the drain's either going to be in, or you're going to have to put it in at a different stage in your installation. A seal system, you put it in when you're doing the mud, before you're doing the mud, and then you pack it underneath, or after you install your tray. You can also do it before you install your tray. However, depending on the situation you have, the drain, the type of drain, and when it goes in is going to be different. So, you know, you're going to have to prepare for that. So, yeah, your studs are all ready. Now you got to install your pre-slope. If you're using a vinyl liner, you have to install your pre-slope. Don't skip the pre-slope. I don't care what anyone else on YouTube says. TCNA calls for it, manufacturers call for it, so just do it. Install it doesn't have to be mud either. It could be, they actually have, I'll link to them in the description, they have foam trays they can use for a pre-slope. You can make it out of anything you want, as long as it's solid and it slopes to the drain, it's fine. So install your pre-slope, be it mud, be it foam, whatever. Put it in and make sure it slopes to the drain. Doesn't even have to be perfectly level around the perimeter, because as long as it slopes to the drain, it's good. 1/4 inch per foot, it's good. You know, from all directions, slopes to the, it's good. When you put, then you're going to put your vinyl liner in and install that correctly according to the directions. And then once your vinyl liner is in, then you can install your backer board. Depending on the kind of backer board you're using, it's either can be in the mud but not all the way down to the liner, or it has to be above the mud and you have to put a bead of sealant. So it depends on the kind of backer board you're using. Hardy backer board, for example, can't be in the mud. It has to be above the mud. If you're using something like Dense Shield, that has to be above the mud. It can't be in the mud. And it also depends on if you're putting, say, Dense Shield up, which I really don't use anymore, but if you're putting Dense Shield up and then you're going to put a sheet membrane over it and you're going to seal everything in, then if it's in the mud or not, it doesn't matter. It depends on the system you're using. But if you're using a vinyl liner, be very careful what you're using and whether it can be below the liner, the mud, or it has to be above the mud. In any case, even if it's like a backer board and you cement backer board, it's going to be in the mud. It can't go down all the way down to the liner. Honestly, I don't even do vinyl liners anymore. I've moved on from that. I've got a lot of videos that actually show how to do it, but I don't use those anymore. Once your vinyl liner is in, you can put in your backer board. The vinyl liner, when you put in the vinyl liner, it has to be at least, I like to go at least 6 inches above the curb. The height of the curb. So if your curb is at 4 inches, you want your vinyl liner to be about 10 inches. It can be a little bit less, you know, 3-4 inches, but I like to go about 6 inches above the height of the finished curb. I'm also gonna show, make a video showing how to do a curb without having to use, use wire lath, without having to nail anything into it, and without having to do mud. There's an easy system, and I'll actually link to that in the description. Cost a few bucks, but it makes your life very easy. So do that. I know I'm going rambling back and forth, but I'm just trying to think of things. I got some stuff written down here that I'm going over. So you put your backer board in, you got your liner in correctly, and you got your liner in correctly, and then you're going to put your backer board in. Do not nail through the liner below the height of the curb. Do not nail through the liner on the curb. Make sure that you put the dams on the corners at where the liner is at the curb. I'm not going to go into specifics about that because this is just more a general guideline for showers. So your liner's in properly, your backer board's in. Now you can do your top top mud bed for the tile on top of the vinyl liner. Make sure that you protect the weep holes, whether it be a positive weep hole protector, it's just a plastic thing that you can put around or you put some gravel in. Just do everything right. Again, I don't want to get into too many specifics about that. If you're using a seal system like a Schluter or a Hydraband board or some other system, you're gonna install your tray. So you can install the tray, and for example, a Schluter system, you can install your shower tray on your level, flat, prepared subfloor, and then you can put in your drain and then waterproof that. If it's a weedy, the drains are different. So depending on what kind of system you use, the drain, part of the drain, if it's a bonding planche for a seal system, it's going to be going one way. If it's a 3-piece drain for a vinyl liner, you're going to put in part, and then you're going to do your vinyl liner, and then you're going to put in the other part. So that varies depending on the system you're using. Just make sure that you know the steps you need to do for the system you're using and the time you need to do them. Okay, so you got your foam tray in, you got your vinyl liner in. Now you got your mud on you got your shower floor in, mud, foam, whatever. You've got your wall board up. Now you're not ready for tile just yet. First, you have to waterproof. If you've got cement board, you're going to put alkali resistant seam tape on your seams and in your corners, and you're going to put and then fill that with thinset in the corners. You want to skim the corners with thinset, but you don't want to fill the corner. You got to leave room for movement. If you're waterproofing with a liquid applied waterproofing membrane, you got to do your liquid applied waterproofing membrane over the entire thing according to the manufacturer's directions. You have to use the fabric, the fiberglass fabric. Others you don't. Whether they call for it or not, I always use it in the corners, especially in the corners. So you're going to waterproof. If it's a seal system, you're going to put all your banding in and make sure you put your waterproofing membrane on the tray. If it doesn't have it already installed, so you're going to do that, tie everything in. You got everything waterproofed, everything is dry. Flood test it. If you're doing a vinyl liner, you're going to flood test your vinyl liner after you install it before you put your final mud bed in. Make sure there's no leaks. If you find a leak, it's easy to fix at that point. If you tile it and then you have a leak, it's a huge headache. With a seal system like a Schluter system, you're gonna do all your banding, all your seal everything up, and then flood test. Make sure there's no leaks. Don't skip that. Make sure you do it. Okay, so you got all your wall board up. You got all your everything is all set, and you're gonna install. You're getting ready for tile. I will usually do the shower floor first, and then do the walls. I will put the sills in before I put any wall tile in. Depending on what kind of shower floor you have. If you've got like one of those river rocks where it's all undulated and stuff, I do the walls first and then I do the shower floor. The shower is waterproof, so it really makes no difference which way you do it. Preferably, you're going to put the wall tile on top of the shower floor, but sometimes that is makes it much more difficult. So depending on the tile you got, you're going to put the shower floor in first or not. You're going to install the wall tile. You're going to do your layout. You're going to make sure that the layout, what every cut is before you install any tile. You're gonna, for the height from the piece on the floor, the piece on the ceiling, piece in the corners, etc., etc. If you've got a niche, you're gonna take that into account as well. So you're gonna do your layout, and you're gonna be ready to install your tile. If you don't want to install the shower floor first and you want to do your walls first, but you want the wall tile to be on top of the shower floor, you can always put a ledger board in, leave out the bottom row, then put in your shower floor, and then install install that bottom row. So you're ready to install your tile. You're going to get the proper dry set mortar, thin set for your tile and for your system. Don't skimp on the mortar. Don't buy the cheapest mortar available. That's what holds your tile to the wall and to your floor and everything. Get a good quality thin set mortar, dry set mortar. Use the proper one for your system. If you're doing a Schluter system, use either, you want to use a modified thin set, use their modified thin set. If you don't want to use that thin set, then you have to use an unmodified thin set. If you're using, if you're going over another manufacturer's foam board, use the mortar that they recommend for their system. Doesn't have to be their brand as long as it's the same type of mortar. If you're using a large format tile, use a mortar made for large format tile. They're usually LFT, large format tile, or LHT, large and heavy tile. If you want to make your life easier, you can use a lightweight mortar that has no slump and has no sag. What's called a stixotropic. There's different kinds of mortars that you can use that meet the standards that you need. Just make sure that you use the one recommended for your shower system. Use the correct size trowel. If you've got a large format tile, you're going to need a tile with a deeper notch. If you're using a smaller tile, you can use a smaller notch. Sometimes with a smaller tile, you still need another notch, but for a large tile, you will never need a small notch for a large tile. The coverage in a wet area is 95%. So you need to get really good coverage. Do not spot bond. That is not an acceptable method. I see it all the time, and it causes huge amounts of problems. Do not spot bond. Spot bonding is putting blobs of thin set on the tile and then placing it on the wall, and it's just a huge problem. I'm not going to get much more into that. If you have a niche, now this is, like I was saying, this is just for a basic shower. If you've got like a complicated shower with a knee wall, 20 niches, vaulted ceiling, or whatever it is, then you're going to have to, evaluate your situation and then proceed accordingly. But generally, for most showers, this is a pretty good guideline. So you installing your tile, you're going to say, with your tile, you're going to keep your grout lines consistent. If you're using a large format tile, a leveling system really helps. If you're using a smaller tile, you don't need one. Keep your grout lines consistent. If it's 1/8 of an inch, all your grout lines should be 1/8 of an inch. Don't let them be bigger and smaller. Stay flat, plumb, square, and level. Check your work often. Keep your tile clean. If you get any thin set coming out through the grout lines, clean it out. It's very easy to clean out when you're installing tile. It's much more difficult to clean out after it's dried. And you always risk damaging the tile edges if you have to scrape out hard thin set. For the niche, I like, if you're going to have a niche in your shower, plan for the niche ahead of time before you proceed. Know where it's going to be. Make any adjustments that you need to make. I like to cut in my niche after I started tiling. That way you can put it exactly where it needs to go. You don't have to do your layout exactly how it needs to be. You can just do a rough layout, and then you get to a certain height. You know exactly where all your tile lines are, all your grout, and then you can cut it in and put it in. Especially true when you're using a foam board shower system. It's much easier, and that way you can get exactly, if you want it to fall all on grout lines, you can make it fall along grout lines. You can get the pre-made ones, you can make them yourself. Just make sure that everything is always waterproof when you put it in. Okay, so you got all your tile in. You got your wall tile in, you got your ceiling tile. Oh, if you're going to be doing the ceiling, usually it's best to put your ceiling tile up before you put your last row of wall tile. That way, especially because a lot of times the ceiling tile is on a diagonal. That way you don't have to be as neat going into the corners. And when you put your wall tile up, it covers the grout lines. It covers that cut edge of the ceiling tile and makes it a lot easier. As I was saying, be clean as you go. Clean out the grout lines, clean the tile as you go. Keep everything as clean as possible. Make sure you leave your expansion and contraction in your corners because it's a wood frame, it's going to move. Okay, so you got all your tile all installed. Now you're getting ready for grout. Clean the tile thoroughly. Get rid of all contaminants. Get rid of all, if you've been scraping out thin set from the grout lines, make sure you vacuum it. Get everything off the wall and the floor. Make sure everything is clean. So you got that ready. When you're grouting, you're going to put your grout in the grout lines on the walls, but you're going to not fill the corners with grout. If you do grout in the corners, you can just scrape it out before you get ready to caulk. The grout, mix the grout according to the manufacturer's directions. Especially for a cementitious grout, if you overwater it or you overwash it, if you've got it will discolor, wash out the grout, you get mottled, it won't look even. So follow the directions on the grout. Mix it according to the directions. If you're using a premixed grout like a Flexicolor CQ or some other one that you're using, make sure you read the directions. Grout instructions vary considerably depending on the type of grout you use. So follow the directions on the grout. Just don't assume anything about grout. Get your grout, read the directions, mix it according to the directions if that's what it says, and apply it in the way that they say to apply it. Don't assume anything. Okay, so you got all your walls grouted, your floor grouted, etc., etc. The corners need to be a soft joint. They have to be. You have to caulk the corners, preferably silicone. Silicone sometimes is hard to find, but if you plan for it, you can order it ahead of time. All the manufacturers make a color matching caulk for their grout colors, so you don't have to guess on the color. When you buy your grout, buy your silicone for your corners. I have a video that shows how to use silicone in your corners. It's not as easy as acrylic, but it's a much better job. If you're afraid of the silicone, use acrylic, but don't grout it in. The acrylic won't last as long as the silicone and it's not as flexible, but it's better than grout. Okay, so now you've installed your tile, you've caulked your corners, you've grouted everything. Now you're going to clean it all up, get it spotless. If you installed a heating system in the floor, don't turn that on. You can test it, but don't turn it on. You got to wait 10 days. So like I was saying, it's all grouted, etc., etc. While you're waiting, you can have the plumbers come in. If you're doing your own plumbing, you can put all your escutcheons in, all your finish trim in, whatever. As far as the tile work goes, you're pretty much finished, and you want to keep it clean and don't contaminate anything until you don't want to get any dust or dirt or anything on the grout until it has cured. If you spill something on the grout before it's cured, even a stain-resistant grout can stain. If you're going to seal your grout because you used a regular grout, don't seal the next day. You have to wait the appropriate amount of time. Could be 24 hours, could be 3 days, 4 days, could be a week, could be 14 days. Depends on the sealer you're using and the grout you're using. If you need to seal your tile before you grout, seal before you grout. If you need to seal the grout, seal the tile before you grout. Let the grout cure the appropriate amount of time, then seal it again. Some porcelain tiles, even though they're porcelain, need to be sealed. Usually the polish to the hone. I'm going to make a video about that. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So just check to make sure that your whatever tile you're installing, if it needs to be sealed, seal it. If you're using a natural stone, it has to be sealed regardless before you grout. So anyway, so this is just a, like I was saying, just a brief, not complete, not everything, but just a general guideline of some of the things you need to think about when you're installing a shower. There's a lot more to this, but hopefully this got you thinking on how to plan your shower and you know, the steps that you need to take, and then depending on the system you're using, you know, some of the steps might be in a different order, but generally this should be helpful on when you're planning to install your shower. Hopefully I didn't leave out too much. Leave your comments in the comments section below, and just in case you haven't seen my videos before, my name is Sal de Blasi. I've been installing tile for over 34 years, tile contractor in the Boston area. Check me out on Patreon. If you can support me there, that'd be great. And don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget, this is a new thing we have to add now to the videos. It's been a little bit, but I just keep forgetting, is hit the notification bell so you will get notified when I upload a new video, which is usually every Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m. Sometimes I will do 2 videos a week. Usually if there's a second video, it'll be on a Wednesday sometime during the day. So anyway, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of this.